2, 1. Fuck, I don't have an intro planned. All right. Welcome. All right. Welcome. Hold on a second. Welcome.
Sorry.
I'm hearing an
That
echo.
is the best intro ever.
Oh, is that echo from me?
No. I had the stream playing in a separate window and now it's self-echoed, which is very fitting for tonight's episode because tonight we're gonna get firmly planted up our own ass, with 3 films that are arguably made from directors who have done the same, according to depending who you talk to. Um, tonight's episode is Surrealistic Self-Indulgence, um, aka the in the therapy part 2, and Not Literally Me part 2. There's just so many other episodes and films that we've kind of touched upon that get into these kind of themes. Some very Freudian, some very Jungian, some very other philosophers. Um, but these are films that so this was an episode that I originally planned for my birthday month, which was luckily postponed because I definitely needed some time to kind of had a hell of a time the past few weeks. We were working on the production for Steven's upcoming project. I don't want to give too many details. It's kind of a project we're involved in, but
Yeah, no, I mean it was kind of this like whirlwind because I mean the original plan, and again I don't know how much we want to give away on the podcast here, but uh, the original plan was to actually do this episode in person. Which, if you followed the podcast for any length of time, you're one of like 2 people who has. Um, no, but you'll know that I am in the United States, in Arkansas, and you guys are not.
right, we're
So,
up in communist
up in
Canada, as
Canada,
you
right?
insisted on
So,
calling it.
right. So this became like this idea because I was going to be up there anyway. We shot part of this independent film project that was. You'll find out about it soon enough. But I was really glad as I finished Synecdoche, New York today that we didn't try to do this in person because I feel like the hot takes are going to be flying. There could have been a fist fight.
True,
No,
and we were
Make
so
it sound like
wrapped up
that's
in
happening.
we were so wrapped up in the production that I
no,
think
I joke,
to
but
take
no,
any time away from it to
and
get
this
this
is the other
fine.
thing.
I mean,
These
I doubt
films,
Steven could take all 3 of
no. Here's the thing. I mean, jokes aside, these films are very heavy. I think they all kind of bring a lot to the table. It's going to be hard to dissect all of them, and I don't know if I was in the right headspace to be able to go from like writer director Steven to I have to coherently express my thoughts about these 3 extremely heavy films. And I don't know that I'm ready tonight, but we're going to try it. We're going to see what happens.
We'll make it
What a
work, as
what a
I've
story.
we'll make it work, as Stephen would often say when we were making our project. Um, but no, that's the thing. It's like when you're in creator mode, when you're creating something for yourself, it's a very different mindset than the analytic mode. And when we go into these films, we're in our film review, analytic um, modes. This is where we kind of take input and draw inspiration, and then when we go to make our own projects, we kind of have to switch our mindsets into creator mode. And yeah,
And I
these
think
these
no,
films
and
really kind of dive into the nature of that to some degree.
Wait, you
and
guys
I
get to switch mindsets? Fuck, I'm jealous.
well, no, here's the thing though, and I think this bears repeating. I can't think of any 3 films that we've talked about on this podcast that are more deserving of our analysis because there is a lot to unpack.
How much to unpack?
Yep.
Um, should we just jump right in? We didn't actually talk about who's going to introduce what.
Yeah, for how long this episode took to put together, we really came at it with no prep. Fucking,
I'll tell you what.
I'll do the brown bunny.
I'll do the
Oh.
brown bunny. I'll do
Beau then, and then fucking Synecdoche is gonna be, or sorry, Synecdoche. They gotta pronounce it wrong. Fuck you.
Wait,
Steve.
is it what?
I call it Synecdoche because you won't call it Suspiria. You call it Suspira. So this is now
Oh, fuck
called
off.
Synecdoche.
I thought when I first read it on the DVD cover like 10 years ago, I thought it was Synecdoche. You know,
Ooh, the Doge. Yeah, I'm calling it that tonight.
Pass the Dochi.
I mean, it helped. Okay, yeah, but I think that one's a very Devon kind of movie.
No, I think
if
that's
you want to introduce that one.
fair. Without further ado, surrealist self-indulgence, everybody. I will be introducing the first movie of the night. I'm
Can't
sure
wait.
this will be a very diplomatic and non-controversial discussion.
we are going to do our best to give as neutral of a intro for each of these films before we let our true colors show.
Sure.
Anyway, go on.
The Brown Bunny. It is a 2003 experimental art house drama film, a road film that is written, directed, produced, starring, shot, and edited by Vincent Gallo. Now, if you've followed the podcast for any length of time, you'll know that we talked about Vincent Gallo when we did my birthday episode. We reviewed Buffalo 66, which is widely considered to be his magnum opus. I mean, it is a little bit unfair to say that when he only made 2 films. This one kind of ended his career, and we'll get into that. What is what is The Brown Bunny about? Well, it is about Vincent Gallo plays a guy named Bud, who is a motorcyclist racer who's traveling across country, and he is haunted by the ghost of an ex-lover, and regrets that he had over this relationship. And it all boils up one night when he has a chance encounter with this old flame. He's been chasing her across country as he's been doing these motorcycle rides and contests and races, and suddenly she shows up in his life again. This was an infamously controversial film. It was booed out of cons. Roger Ebert called it one of the worst movies that he had ever seen. He thought so poorly of it that Vincent Gallo and Roger Ebert got into a very public feud over it that wound up in the papers, like the Los Angeles Times. I think they were having like warring ads against each other, and Roger Ebert finally said that something to the effect of, "One day I will be thin, and Vincent Gallo will still have directed The Brown Bunny." Because
Oh yeah,
Vincent
I think
Gallo called him like a fat fuck or something
a
like that.
fascist pig. Something
He
like
also
that.
wished cancer upon him before he got a different kind of cancer than what he got, but still
Everybody,
very
you
like,
can
I
blame
mean,
Vincent Gallo for
A
Roger
very
Ebert stuff.
a
Get him.
very mature way to deal with criticism. Anyway, go on.
Sure.
Oh yeah.
So, Vincent Gallo, Chloe Sevigny, fantastic actress who we've no doubt talked about before. She's been in Lars von Trier's Dogville, American Psycho. She's been in some other
kids.
She
Lars
managed to have
von
a
Trier
career after
movies.
this somehow.
Well, no, it is interesting though, and one thing that I do want to bring up is that she has, to her credit, really worked with some very interesting auteurs of her time. So, I mean, she worked with Lars von Trier, with Jim Jarmusch, with Harmony Korine. And so I will give props where it's due. I mean, she's not one to shy away from the more problematic. You know what? Let's just get into it.
Are we getting into
The
it? 'Cause
Brown Bunny, everybody.
It'd be good to get this out of the way early, which just real quick. I don't think that what we saw was actually unstimulated, and I think it was one of the worst PR choices in the world, because that was the weirdest friggin' thing I've ever watched. Like,
Okay,
why was he grabbing
really
the base of
quickly,
it
I
the
guess.
whole time? Why did he never
Has he
take his
ever had
pants off?
sex? Like, that was my whole
Exactly.
time watching, thinking about
Exactly.
it.
Hold on,
And
hold
it's
on.
just
Wait,
so
before
weird
we
that I'm like,
before we
nah.
rip the Band-Aid off, let me go ahead and preface this. I was trying to dance around it. We're just gonna rip it off. We're just gonna get into it.
Yeah, because there's
One
stuff
of the
to talk about
reasons,
after. You know.
well, one of the reasons that this film is as controversial as it is, and the reason its sort of reputation precedes it, there is an infamous unsimulated, quote unquote, unsimulated blowjob at the end of the film where Chloe Sevigny performs oral sex on Vincent Gallo. And is it unfair that he wrote and directed this film? Is it like an elaborate way for him to get his dick sucked?
Yes.
Is it wrong for him to put an actress in that position? Are they both consenting adults and only one of them lost their career over it? Is that fair? That's part of the discussion I think that we're going to be having tonight. So yeah, that's really. I feel like that's the real reason.
It's
No, I
it's
actually don't. I think there's me and Devin have had some like good asides about things to talk about that aren't necessarily that scene. That's why I'm like, fuck it, get it out of the way early, because like honestly, it's worth bringing up. My whole thing is I'm way more of a conspiracy theorist about this. That was the weirdest thing in the world. Like I expected, I don't know, like something close. I don't know. Like I've seen so much in Gaspar Noé movies of like unsimulated stuff, and this wasn't that. It was like weirdly framed. It was weirdly executed. You can like hear him like whispering shit to her, and she's like shaking her head
Oh,
no.
probably
It's like
commands.
he
Yeah.
didn't even like it's the epitome of like I don't know. I'm not gonna get into
well,
it, but
It feels
well,
fake.
Daryl,
it just doesn't
I would
feel.
say
Yeah, it feels
between
fake.
several
It feels
takes and
fake.
angles, like it wouldn't have been real in every single shot. Maybe it was real in one shot, but then they might have faked it in all the other shots.
Well, maybe that's it. Maybe you're right.
That
Maybe he
defeats
just
the
blew his
purpose.
load
Yeah.
right away,
I'm just
and
thinking is
then
yeah, I'm just thinking of the practicality of shooting a scene like that.
because
Yeah.
why else would you do that with the pants and everything? It's just so weird. He's like, again, I don't want to be too graphic for everyone listening, but the way it's executed is sus. That's my whole point. I don't need to
Fair
go
enough.
too deep
We've
into
seen
it.
enough pornographic content to.
Well, and
Yeah.
I will say there's a segment on Wikipedia actually that talks about this, and apparently Gallo considers himself a staunch conservative, a staunch teetotaler, and he describes Brown Bunny. This is his words: a celebration of America that is virulently anti-drug and anti-pornography.
What?
So
That's a
these
choice.
are
What?
his words.
What?
Now, okay. I'm gonna have to jump out here.
Was this
and
the script they inevitably changed for the final product? Because that didn't show in the final product.
I will say this. I think, playing devil's advocate, there are films that have used sex in a way like this to draw a negative connotation based on how unsexual it is. I think, if you look at something like Eyes Wide Shut, that is a very clinical, disgusting look at sexuality. And I think I'm not comparing Gallo to Kubrick in the slightest, but
Well,
I am
I'm
saying
sure
that
he would though.
no, I'm sure he would. Yes, no, exactly.
are you
But
talking about the actual like the rape scene, quote unquote, or are you talking about the actual sex scene? That sounds more
I
descriptive of the rape scene. You know what I mean? Like
I,
trying to
I, I would
depict
say I
that
would
and
say
drug
either
users and
or. I mean,
you
I
know what
would
I mean?
say no. I think both of them are framed in such a way that they are meant to be purposefully unerotic. I think there is some purpose in the way that he's shooting it. I don't.
Yeah, just like how
I
he purposely shot everything in the car horribly, and how he purposely didn't clean his
Okay.
windshield, and how he
okay.
purposely
Here's if I may
the list
for a
can go
second,
on.
Ian, go.
if I may
Sure.
for a second, like here's the thing, like if sorry, I'm trying to find the words, but I know this movie was shot on a low budget, and a lot of people use the excuse that it was shot on a low budget for it looking so bad, especially compared to Buffalo 9.
66.
Sorry, 66. Yeah, sorry about that. But here's the thing: you look at a Neil Breen movie. I need you to hear me out for a second. Look at a Neil Breen movie, and in terms of like storyboarding, if you didn't see anything about the movie, you didn't see anything about the script, but you saw like some of the shots in that movie on paper with like a really good storyboard artist, some of the shots would be really cool. Like, like this slow opening reveal of this book in a like a storage unit, cool on paper. A close up of something transforming into a book or a dice. That's also kind of cool. Like you say, the problem is he's Neil Breen and he doesn't have the experience or the know how or the sanity to pull off good shots or convey that in a compelling way. But there was something there. I think there was ambition behind the shooting in that. I don't feel anything along those lines in the Brown Bunny. And if I did, I would give the movie so much more credit. Every single shot feels like he turned on the camera, moved it around a bit, turned off the camera, and they used whatever they shot no matter what. And every single shot feels like none of the visual ingenuity from Buffalo 66 is present here. The only thing they take from Buffalo is the split screen shots, and I strongly argue that was the worst, most distracting like visual aspect of that movie. So thanks for
So,
bringing that over.
yeah, I'm really glad you brought up Neil Breen because I made a joke about I was watching this film and when I was kind of live reacting to it and kind of coming up with any flippant remark that I could really just to offset people to think that I really hated this movie. But it's like I really want to see what he's trying to get at here, but part of me also just can't help but think of the scene of Neil Breen, trying to save his friend from committing suicide. I just picture him with Vincent Gallo trying to save him from committing career suicide, and he's just too late. Um, but that aside, no, I think a lot of this film, there's a lot of visual inconsistencies. A lot of it, Gallo definitely shot himself just riding in the van, and those are the shots that are like out of focus or not very well composed because he literally shot that himself. And that language is actually very familiar to me because I was a documentary, film student, and I filmed a lot of stuff from the passenger seat. So a lot of that footage kind of looks like my amateur footage from when I was, a film student, kind of starting out. But yeah, a lot of that stuff he shot himself. There's some shots that, like the whole Salt Flat scene is brilliantly composed, and that's because Gallo isn't filming it
Yeah,
himself.
literally.
Like
I mean,
and even the money shot scene at the very end, he is a much better shot than most of the movie. And
Sure.
it's also
eh,
where most of the substance of it is kind of backloaded. I mean, it's a bit of a mouthful, but no, the
No
BJ
pun
aside,
intended.
no, very much intended. Um, but no, like it was the ending that almost like saved it for me, or rather, like okay, I finally get what he's
almost.
going for. Big asterisk though, I feel like he could have told the story in a much more tasteful way if he couldn't help but stick his stick where his heart should be. You know,
Yeah. And
like
I
Well,
gotta say, man, like
I'll,
you're talking about
like
visuals.
Steven, we'll get into this in a second, but I want to give some merit to what the story is being told here. This is basically kind of the perspective of a very, lonely person, very touch depraved. Um, and there is some merit to telling that kind of perspective and that kind of story. And I can relate to it to a certain degree. Um, but the thing about Gallo, and this is my kind of take with him, is I admire him as an artist, but I very much dislike him as a person from what I know of him outside of it, because he just seems to have this insatiable ego. And I think after the partial success of Buffalo 66, he felt like he could do about anything. Um, and I feel like a little bit of it
Well,
went to his head.
here's the thing, and I'll say this because when people talk about this movie and they're going to criticize it, there's two things that I think they criticize the most, right? That they bring up that it was booed out of Cannes, that it was so bad that like Cannes Film Festival went nuts. And that doesn't really hold water because you look at some of the films that have been booed out of Cannes, and it's like Martin Scorsese's Taxi Driver, David Cronenberg's Crash, even Only God Forgives, which I know Daryl is a fan of, was booed out of Cannes. So
Lots of great
that
movies get booed at
no,
Cannes. That's
no,
nothing new.
exactly,
Yeah, I've never heard that cited as a reason for
No,
doing
no,
it,
no,
but-
no. But then the other thing they bring up is Roger Ebert and this whole, like massive sort of like, feud that went on. Like people talk about what Roger Ebert said about this movie. And again, playing devil's advocate, Roger Ebert said a lot of things about a lot of movies that I think were just patently not accurate. I mean, they were not true. I mean, you look at some of the films that he criticized, the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. He famously gave a bad review to John Carpenter's The Thing, to Paul Thomas Anderson's The Master. I mean, some of the like David Lynch's Blue Velvet, David Lynch's The Elephant Man. These are all films that Roger Ebert had some hate boner for in some weird way, which is also funny because then you look at some of the films that he did praise, and it's like he compared Spawn favorably to Blade Runner and Metropolis, which
Yeah,
I'm not. No, and here's the thing, I'm not. No, and I'm not criticizing Roger Ebert as a critic. He's one of the most famous critics. He's well renowned for a reason. But I'm saying that maybe his opinion doesn't hold as much water as everyone else. You know what I mean?
But neither of those
one
reasons are why I
guy.
hate
Yeah,
it.
no, I don't think anybody on this brought up either of those reasons. To me, those have nothing to do with the why this is
On
a
Letterboxd, you see
god-awful,
all of these
horrible
user
fucking
scores
movie.
So
giving it positive ratings just despite that review.
True.
Not because the movie was good, but they were just like, "Oh, fuck you, Roger."
So
just for
this
giving
is
the thing
something I
2.5
want to bring
stars.
up. I just grabbed this image from Roger Ebert's kind of revised review of the movie. He said that after they cut 23 whole minutes out of the movie, which I think is the cut that we saw, he said it was much better. I couldn't imagine this movie 23 minutes. But regardless,
Jesus Christ.
this image here, so this is something that isn't talked about very much, and it's like the rest of the movie outside of the ending, because arguably that's where most of the substance is. But there is some through lines through this. So there's a lot of encounters that Gallo has throughout the film with several women, and they're kind of weird if you look at them from a literal standpoint. Like, why is he just making out with these random people and then kind of blue balling them or blue overing them? Um, but but just trying to go from like a more, what's the word, metaphorical standpoint. I think these moments here that he's trying to capture, particularly with this one woman, I think Lily, is that he is seeing this woman in passing and she's going through a difficult emotional time, and so is he. And then he just starts kind of making out with her. Weird, but I think what he's going for is just sort of this longing, this need to be emotional, sorry, emotionally open with people that you recognize are going through a difficult time, but not being able to really open up about it. And this is him sort of fantasizing being able to emotionally connect with people that he passes by. Um, but I feel like, there's also an issue with this in that it would be a lot more impactful if he just sort of portrayed it how it would have been in real life, where he just passes by these people, recognizes that they're in a state, but they're just not able to connect. And that would be even more devastating. And I think this is just emblematic of his whole approach with this film, that he kind of crosses into sort of incel fantasy that he has about, being able to be physically vulnerable, that he's in passing, even to ghosts. Which, yeah, spoiler, Chloe Sevigny's character died, and this is kind of the whole crux of his character, is the guilt that he feels for misreading a situation that she was in. And
Really quickly, I just want to add there was a meme I saw that said this film and The Sixth Sense have the exact same plot twist.
oh, fuck
And
off.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, except one was well executed and one we actually cared about. The whole time I was watching this movie, I was just thinking, if I just cared about the characters, if I just knew something about them outside of their relationships and how good of a blowjob they give, if I knew anything about them, I would resonate in this movie so much more. I wouldn't be nearly as mean
It's
to
like-
it. Yeah, like the technical aspects are still lacking. There's some controversial elements I don't like. But if there was just an empathetic core that I could really resonate with, and one other film we're talking about tonight has that problem as well, I would have given it so much more credit. I would have given it a pass. But I
Any
just
credit.
don't know. And they're just walking mannequins that pull down their pants every now and again, and that's it. Like, there's just no depth or care to these characters whatsoever. Even
It's
the
like-
performances just felt lacking.
It's
Like,
like
everybody
Gallo,
just
I
folded
think,
in.
expects you to care just because he is who he is, and this is kind
Exactly.
of this is kind of the case of like a vulnerable narcissist. I would label Gallo as. I mean, I'm willing to be wrong on that, but that's just how I see him as an artist. He's sort of this vulnerable narcissist. He craves connection, but he's also disgusted by it, and you see that very much so in Buffalo 66, and even a degree of self-awareness where it's like he literally kidnaps a woman to pretend to be his girlfriend, then he can't stand getting affection from her. He's constantly begging for it. And it just shows this kind of push-pull dynamic, this sort of ironic detachment that he has. But
and I will say,
this is him kind of indulging in that rather than being
Well,
self-aware of it.
There's
I
no
will
art.
say really quickly to the credit of Buffalo 66. That's probably one of my like top 10 favorite films. I think it's a brilliant film that is brilliantly shot. I think the acting is phenomenal. I think it's incredibly well, just it's a phenomenal film. And it reminds me of I remember there was a bunch of memes circulating around.
If you cite a meme one more time, sorry, go on.
No. I mean, this does tie into what I'm saying because it's funny. When I reviewed Buffalo 66 and we reviewed it on the podcast, I made the statement in my Letterboxd review that Buffalo 66 to me has so much in common with like a Godard film because it's not just trying to deconstruct a crime film. It's not trying to deconstruct this movie of a guy who gets out of prison and kidnaps a woman. To me, it's a film that is deconstructing films. The way that it's shot and the way that the narrative is structured is a deconstruction of the meta narrative itself. And I compared
Sure.
that to like Jean-Luc Godard, and I also compared that to Kanye West. And what was funny was both Kanye and Gallo have had their fair share of controversy. And I remember going back to what I was saying, there was this meme floating around for a while that when Kanye was in the news this year, and it was like, I don't know how many, but Kanye made Graduation I have left in me or something, to where it's like, you want to defend this person in spite of all these terrible, awful things that they've said and done, and the lack of quality content that they've produced because of this one great album. And so, in a weird way, Buffalo 66 is kind of Gallo's Graduation, if that makes sense. Like, there's this weird
Big
kind of
time.
like. No, it is. And I will say this: when I went to Buffalo on the way back from Canada, we stopped. My girlfriend and I stopped at one of the filming locations for Buffalo 66, and it was this really surreal experience that this house had not changed. It looked exactly the way it did on film in 1990, whatever. So I don't know. I mean, it's hard to defend this film. I feel like I see what he's going for. I'm kind of like Devin. There's this weird like I want to give him some leeway, and I don't know how much of that is because of Buffalo 66 or how much is just this film. I was almost sleep deprived at the time I watched it, and maybe I was just in like the right mindset for it. I do think there's something here. I don't know that it's executed as well as it needs to be or with the level of care that it needs to be, but I do think there's something under the surface.
There certainly is something under the surface, but I think he undermines his intent with his execution. Like I said, I don't think I could put it more aptly. He fits his dick where his heart should be. Um, and I stand by that. I think there's so many choices he made for his own gratification that he could have thought about, you know, if he sort of separated himself a little bit, if he's hired someone else to play the character, and if he put as much work and effort into developing that character with the actor, um, and I think they could have made some much more tasteful kind of choices, like even just the way the scene unfolds in the end, like the suggestions Floyd Savini's character makes would have made it a much more tasteful scene. Literally, getting his dick stuck on camera does not add to the story. It doesn't make it a more compelling drama. It makes it controversial and it grabs the wrong attention for the wrong reasons. I remember talking to a buddy of mine at work. He's not a movie buff, but he's a bit older than me. But he remembers going out of his way to rent the Brown Bunny from Blockbuster just because it had an unsimulated blowjob scene in it. And I feel like this is the crowd that this film attracts. It's people who either want to defend this film, which are really in the niche, um, or people that literally watch it because it's like over the shelf porn. Which I know is not
Well,
the intent of the film, but I feel like it undermines its intent with its execution.
no, and I think that's fair. And I mean, I think the only thing that I can really say in regards to that is, I bring up again Eyes Wide Shut. I bring up again, Requiem for a Dream, which are both films that I feel like use sex in a way that is unerotic and disgusting and serves a narrative purpose. Now, again, to credit what you're saying, I mean, it's not the same as Darren Aronofsky or Stanley Kubrick getting their dick sucked, right?
Well,
that
at
that may
least they
be
they,
the
they they
key
don't feel the
difference.
need to have it done literally on camera for their own gratification. It's just sort of indulging in certain themes that tickle their fancy. I wouldn't even equate those, but anyway, go on.
No, I mean, but I think it's the same. It's used in a similar way to portray sex as this very unerotic thing,
I
right?
don't know if that was
There's a
intentional.
clinical.
I don't know if I agree with that. It feels
Really?
like I think he legitimately wanted these scenes to look sexy. I think he legitimately wanted these scenes to feel hot and be hot, but he just didn't know how to do it in a way that made sense. Like, say what you want about Gaspar Noé, I have tons of problems with them. It's actually seem visually interesting. At least he can make it. I honestly think he legitimately tried to make it tantalizing. He just failed miserably.
Daryl's
Yeah,
I
the
just
the
don't get that.
opening of Love has more passion in that single cum shot than anything in this film.
so Daryl,
Yeah,
I know
Daryl,
you've
you've been
been
quiet.
you've been quiet on your end. I know you just typed out some thoughts. I will say though, just very quickly, I think Gallo would kind of agree with you in that he wished he never made the film, mostly because of the media circus that surrounded it. But Daryl, I do want to
Sure.
give you a chance to get a word.
Yeah, no, that's what I said, man. It's the lowest of the fucking low. It's just it's unwatchable. It's horrible. The gall that Steven has trying to defend this when he made such a
Oh,
big deal over 4 minutes of an actual emotional pie scene that has actual like structural psychology built into it, and you're gonna watch like 40 minutes of a dirty fucking windshield and then call it like somewhat a good swing. Like, no, dude, this is by all means the worst film I've
it
ever
sounds
seen.
like
This is
somebody hates
career
pie.
suicide. This is like I have no fucking reason why this should have ever been seen outside of Cannes. Like the fact that it got distribution is probably one of the
Yep.
saddest parts about all of this. It's
You know why it got
garbage.
distribution?
Oh, I
Because
know
Buffalo
why.
66 was good.
Oh no, it's not even that. It's
Literally,
the blowjob.
the
proper.
trailer I saw for this, no, it's because he directed it. Like, literally, the trailer for this movie, the first trailer that came out was written and directed by... blanking on the names tonight. Sorry. Written and directed by Vincent Gallo. It just shows him looking out the window, and then it cuts and says adults only. Like, they banked on the name recognition big time. Like, that's the
all
only
they could do
reason
at that point.
this film exists. Yeah, because there's nothing else there. Like, that's why they advertise the sex scenes for as awkward and painful to watch as they are, because there's nothing else to this movie. If if I genuinely saw something in there, I'd be a lot more generous, but I just didn't. Maybe I have to watch it again, but I'm gonna be honest, guys, I don't want to.
No, same. Like, there's nothing. But like, again, me and Devin have some talks, and like, kind of like you were bringing up earlier, that whole thing about like the little like tableaus with different women. Like, one single idea that makes that whole thing work and make sense. Just have a shot of like him in the car, like watching that interaction happen. You can still film it all by yourself, but then you at least have like this outer confirmation of what the fuck is going on. It's like he just wanted to play so coy. And like, why does he go to this dead girl's mom's house and like not tell her that she's dead? Like, there's so many questionable things going on with the structure of what's like. And again, if that's America, if that's what he wants to show as like pure Americana, then like he's got some issues.
And and also, okay, let's talk about what the name of the film. So he goes into a pet shop and talks about, and asks about like the lifespan of like a brown bunny. And apparently she had eaten a chocolate bunny and got herself sick, and that's a cute story. But what broader symbolism does that title give the movie?
Right?
I'm
Like,
genuinely
does it
asking.
do?
I want to know, like, Steven, did you pick up on something from the pet shop scene? Do you even remember that scene was in?
No, I remember the scene. I mean, I don't really have an answer for that. I mean, no, I'm going to be completely honest. I mean, I think that there is, maybe there's some kind of something there about, the loss of youth and the loss of innocence, that maybe a bunny rabbit or a chocolate bunny is something that we particularly associate with children, and maybe that's kind of what he's going for, that it is this loss of innocence, and she was kind of this, in this weird Madonna horror complex thing, that she was perfect and then she was kind of soiled. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of fucked upness in this movie, and maybe that's what he's going for.
It sounds like a lot of him problems for sure.
No, absolutely. No, it does. And I will say, I mean, this is, I mean, almost kind of a low blow to bring up the fucking Ghost Story review. I mean, these are two.
Oh no, dude! I literally need to compare, because you
man.
made a big deal about 4 minutes. So you're talking about like 20 to 30 minutes of this film is looking out a window, gaining nothing. Just
the whole movie is gaining nothing.
Like it is.
Or is the nothingness the point, right? I mean, is it the sort of
okay? Yeah, now you understand it when it's this movie. No, fuck that, man. I feel you. We don't need to get into it.
I'm gonna play devil's advocate, but there was a quote from Werner Herzog, who actually did praise this film, saying that it does capture a very particular type of loneliness that men feel, and and I do agree with that to an extent. It also captures kind of the underlying kind of predatory aspect of those types as well, which is unfortunate.
And I'm also, not just Werner Herzog, but Josh Safdie actually said, no matter how many times you run it over in your head, no matter how many times you act it out, ride a motorcycle, hit the road, you're alone with yourself, and you always come back to the same thoughts, and that is loneliness. That is why The Brown Bunny is Gallo's best work. It is self-expression at its dire straits and most important.
Like, I know what the film is about, but why? Why should I care
has
about
he seen the movie? He never hits the free road with his motorcycle. It's a track motorcycle. It's
also
not Harley. You know what I mean?
He does hit the soft flats, which is the best shot sequence of the movie. The whole soft flats. Like, I could see doing a whole like music video edit with that with those shots.
Yeah, but you're not alone with him when that happens.
You need better footage for music
with
video.
like, yeah, I can't, man. Good for
I will just I
We're
will say that
allowed to be wrong sometimes.
No, we're all allowed to be wrong, and we'll certainly get more into this as the episode progresses. I'm just going to say, look, I feel like if fucking Josh Safdie and Werner Herzog are on my side, I feel like I'm in good company. I so is there more to say about this film? Should we get to ratings? I mean, like, I feel like there's a lot to go over here, and we could be here all night just on this film, right?
There's a lot more to go over with the next two movies. So
No,
maybe we should rate this.
like you said, I think we actually talked about basically every scene in the movie, basically every line of dialogue. Yeah, I think that's.
And we
pretty
talked about
much
4
covered.
scenes.
Yeah, isn't it wild that we could do that in 20
Um,
minutes instead of an hour and a half? Wow.
I have literally just
Sorry,
one more thing to say
salt.
about this movie before we move on, and that's 3.6.
Well, I'm
Ooh.
going to say 8 out of 10.
Wow.
Oh,
Can I talk
I'll
you
make
down
it-
to at
I'll
least a
make-
6 point? Actually, I'll give a 6.9 to the end scene.
Okay.
oh, fuck you.
Boo.
You suck.
But the rest of the movie is a 3.6.
Yeah.
Okay. Daryl, you first.
Can you give like what? What is the lowest you can give? Like I'm a
Zero.
smidge above that, like 0.5. Do I have to give it a 1? Is it?
I'll
You,
give
you
it
can
half.
give it a negative score.
I've
if you
never
want.
had such a bad experience with a film, guys.
What-
Like
what-
I know
what
it's
about
coming
a-
out as salt, but like I was viscerally unpleased by this movie.
What about a 0.0069?
Oh, I like that.
There you go.
I just got
Yeah, that's my score
0.69,
too.
man. 0.69. It's like just above half a star. That's that. There you go.
There you go.
I'll give it a half a 6.9, a 1 point, half a 3.6, which is a 1.8, and that is purely out of sympathy for all of the poor actresses that had to be saddled to this fucking movie.
Damn.
Nothing else.
Yeah.
Damn.
I'm sorry, man. I couldn't.
Yeah.
I'm camp with Daryl.
I will
Just
say it was an interesting discussion. Certainly a mouthful. I
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
you waited till the end too to use it.
I know
You
it's
fucker.
such low hanging testicles. I mean fruit.
Well, we wouldn't know.
Yeah, I guess
Wouldn't
not.
know.
Just you see the
Speaking of
face
getting mouthfuls,
Jesus Christ.
Wait, which one are we going on to now?
it's a neck the key.
Oh, okay.
Synecdoche, New York.
Synecdoche, Schenectady. Yeah, that's it is
Yeah,
a
the
mouthful.
Doge. The Doge.
Synecdoche. Synecdoche, New York. Ian, did you want to take this one? I feel like I've portrayed me enough. I want another actor to portray me in this role. And
You have to
Okay,
do it
that's-
like Devin, though.
Okay, am I playing the younger version of you, or am I playing the older version of you? Question.
You're playing the older version of me, who forgets where he is in this place and time and only remembers the younger version. If that
Okay,
makes
is
sense.
that when I'm okay? Sorry, just catching up here. Is that when I'm sitting in a burning building while also trying to have sex? Correct.
Yes. Go on.
Okay, perfect. All right, good.
Spoilers.
I'm in the mindset. All right, 3, 2, 1. Synecdoche, New York. It's directed by the infamous, well, written, directed. I think it's produced by him as well, and I think he had a hand in the technical aspects in one way. Charlie Kaufman, a admittedly kind of pretentious guy that has made some admittedly pretty brilliant works. Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind is one of my favorite movies ever made. His latest movie for Netflix, Think If Anything's, was surprisingly great. But movies like Anomalisa and Adaptation didn't really hit the mark for me, so this movie was kind of a coin flip. But what's it about? It's about a theater director from the late great Philip Seymour Hoffman. God rest your soul. This was not fun one to watch after your passing, man. And the women in his life, starred by every single Hollywood actress known to man. Every Hollywood actress you could think of is in this movie at one point or another. And it's a rather bizarre movie because he creates a literal life-size replica of New York City inside of a warehouse as part of his new play. The whole movie is about his struggles of dealing with finishing and writing his own play, dealing with his own brutality, his own relationships, very dense, very complex movie. It's only shot for $20 million, but it still bombed at the box office, and apparently critics didn't really dig it either. Said it was a major step down from Eternal Sunshine. It had a mixed reception when it came out, but like all the films we're talking about, got a much better reception after its theatrical release. So, oh man, this movie, I I hate to say it, Charlie Kaufman made a really good movie. It pains me so much to say that, but
Yeah, you
this
jived with the
film.
detail stuff, eh? Like,
Now, here's the thing. I don't think it resonates with me quite as much as Eternal Sunshine, or I think if anything, like those films very much centered around the dealing with like the loss of a loved one, and moreover the loss of a relationship, and that just resonates with me personally much more than like mortality and trying to get process the ideas of a script and a story. That being said, that's basically my only major complaint about this movie. And in terms of like ambition and scale and all of the great performances that come together, all of the ideas that weave in somehow seamlessly, great balancing of tone is all like exceptionally a very heavy, very big movie, but yeah, it's one that's gonna stick with me for a while, and I'll definitely watch it again. I've only seen it once, so
And
and my
Well,
thoughts are still somewhat fuzzy.
and
I
Ian, I thought that was a great performance, although you did kind of stray out of character a little bit, because I did find that this film really personally resonated. Um, in terms of just like someone who very
Right, yeah.
ambitious
Sorry,
in. Oh no, it's all good. It's all.
yeah, go.
I'm still
fucking
kind of playing
same.
in character, but no, like this film I did find really personally resonate with me. Someone who's super ambitious, um, and who tries to channel his own inner turmoil into a big creative project, and very easily loses track of time. Um, damn, like it's funny because I remember picking up the DVD of this at a liquidation world for like $3 10 years ago, and I never got around to watching it just because I knew it was like a very dense subject matter. I knew Charlie Kaufman was a name that came up, and I was still collecting movies at this point in time. But I'm glad that I kind of sat on it and waited till now to finally watch it. 'Cause there's some certain themes that I don't think would have connected with me as I saw it 10 years. Um,
Right.
just like yeah, I felt like I waited just the right amount of time to be able to fully appreciate what this film is. Because yeah, it kind of hit me like a truck at times, especially when I went back to rewatch it, because there's so many details in the background that I just miss. Like the one older character was in the background in the first scene, and I was just blown away by that. Like holy shit, he was there the whole time. And there's so many. This is such a densely packed. Like this is a film that could easily have expanded out to 4 hours, but it's cut down to just two, and there is like literally clue in every single shot, just about. And the way it's edited is so tight knit. Again, this is a film that you could absolutely analyze down to the core, and it's solid in terms of what it's
Right.
trying to execute. So, um, that's some blanket praise for now. We'll get more into it, but
No, no, I agree,
I'd love
man.
to hear what Steven and Daryl think of it.
Um,
well, I kind of feel like I went a little ham on the Brown Bunny and didn't give Daryl a chance to talk. So Daryl, you first.
no, it was just fucking you guys. It's just how you guys get, man. I just want to get it in there either way. It's no bad blood. Fucking well, this one, man, it's kind of the same fucking deal as you, Devin. Well, in a way, like I forget what this played before, but this I had a very core memory of this movie, especially the trailer for this. It was I want to say in front of like Goon or like Hot Tub Time Machine, one of the ones I always watched on repeat. So I saw this trailer so much, and none of my friends were interested in the movie, but I was like gung ho, like, yeah, man, we got to find it. Like, I really want to watch this someday. But exactly like you're saying, Devin, if I watched it back then, I probably would have just fucking hated it, and that would probably just be how I think of it to this day. But all these years later and all the things that have happened in between to finally revisit it, and it's like I could still remember parts of the trailer as I was watching the film. Like it was crazy. And then the subject matter wise, it feels like it gets even deeper then, because it's like this film itself has been like a fucking brain virus of sorts that like
Yeah.
so woefully affects this guy. So yeah, man, it was honestly fucking a pretty amazing surreal watch. Like the whole like I watched 40 minutes of it, then had to take a break and come back to it a while later, and I rewatched that first 40 minutes. So I was able to watch the backgrounds a bit more, like you're saying, and yeah, dude, just so dense, so incredibly detailed. Very similar to the final film we're going to be talking about tonight. I feel like they share a lot more DNA than I realized when we planned this
Oh
episode.
yeah.
But man, like I I love how big of a swing it is. I love how conceptually fucking out there it goes. Like it tears apart what meta is. Like certain movies can go meta. This is like the layers become the layers, and like yeah, like you said, we can go a bit deeper. I think kind of like Only God Forgives, we probably all have a unique interpretation of this film because it's so dense and it doesn't really guide you, you know what I mean? There's a lot for the viewer to interpret. So in that regard, like kind of like you were saying, Ian, I guess that's kind of a pretentious trait of films. But when you do something like this, that it's reflective of the story you're telling, you kind of get like a little get out of jail free card. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, it's actually clever. It's interwoven into the story that's actually interesting and feels
purposeful.
organic. What he's
Yeah.
setting up and building off. It's not just, oh hey, here's a reference to that character you all know and love. Oh hey, isn't this hilarious that this part of the movie is so bad? No,
The-
like it's just way more inventive and thought out in terms of how it
yeah.
not only breaks down the fourth wall, but destroys it with a sledgehammer, builds up another wall, and then proceeds to break down that wall again for the course of 2 hours.
It's
Right.
such a
Well,
fractal
here's
pattern of a film. There's so many like
It really is a
references and
fractal.
Easter eggs, and again like motifs. I like to use the term motifs, like music that are repeated ways. Like there's so many references to itself. The end is the beginning. It's cyclical, but it really does a good job at kind of establishing these ideas and themes in ways you don't expect. That what the again going back and rewatching parts of it, there was just certain parallels and certain coincidences, certain things that I just didn't pick up on the watch. That just the more I look into it. But anyway, Steven, go on.
no, I mean just to kind of jump in here. I have a bit of a confession to make. I don't usually I don't usually care for Charlie Kaufman. In some of the films that are considered some of his best, whether they are written by him or directed by him, I have never really connected with him on a level that really resonates with me, or on an emotional or whatever. Like, and it's almost worse than I feel about Gaspar Noé, because even with the exception of like Enter the Void, Gaspar Noé is a director that it's like, yeah, his films are like, they're well made, they're competent, they're well shot, but it's like there's not that emotional resonance. And Charlie Kaufman has always kind of been like that, but without the the technicality. So like there's not that sort of like whirling, fucking Benoit Debbie, cinematography to really keep me engaged, even when the narrative isn't doing that. And so I didn't like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. I didn't
Blasphemy.
really care. No, I didn't really care for it. I didn't care for being John Malkovich. I've tried a couple of times to get through adaptation, and it's like nothing has really worked until I watched this fucking movie. This movie is phenomenal. It is a masterpiece. It's something that I
Holy
need to
shit.
revisit. No, I fucking loved this movie. I think it's one of the best movies I've ever seen, and maybe it's because I just came off of doing this huge film production in Canada, like maybe it's just that I've kind of been in this mindset of like I have to create this fucking magnum opus that like kind of like what you and Devin were saying, like if I was 10 years younger this wouldn't have hit. But today this fucking hit, and I still have a lot of questions about it. I know I need to go back and rewatch this, but I'm so excited to do that because I and there's another film that we're going to be talking about tonight that I feel like is this but worse. And I feel like a key difference is I feel like I'm in such good hands with this film. There are so many motifs and recurring themes and so many ideas that I can come back on and pick up on, that the seeds are being planted. And I don't really think the other film we're going to talk about does that very well. But regardless, in the meantime, this is a fucking phenomenal film, and I'm so glad I watched it when I did.
Fucking right.
We
Damn.
did it. All right, episode's done. We did it.
We
Steven
did
has
it.
character arc. We're all done. All right, that's right.
And die.
Shoot. Yep,
And die. No, exactly.
yeah, spoiler alert.
But
Yeah.
no, that's great to hear because I think yeah, there's just so much about this film that so carefully considered and well thought out. And Charlie has famously what's the word? He's famously declined from explaining it too much because he doesn't want to rob the viewer of their own personal watching and interpreting the film. And I think that's also a very smart thing to do to kind of give that distance and allow people to create their own interpretations. Again, for me, I've been trying to direct films and do other creative projects for the longest time. I very much relate to what Seymour Hoffman's character is going through, where he's a theater director and he's trying to create something very real, very visceral, very true and honest in his work, while all these other things are happening. And as you get older, the body starts decaying and all these weird things happen, and that's become a very reality for me. Um, as of late, as and noticing kind of time slipping, it's scary when you're dedicating all this time and project to a like time and effort into a big project and just time slips away on you and oh man, that's a reality that I wouldn't have foreseen coming if I had seen this 10 years ago. But goddamn,
Oh,
No,
right? That's too deep. Oof.
yeah,
no,
in
I mean, I
17 years.
really there's not enough good things that I can say about this film. I mean, it is. I keep coming back to, like, A, I wish I had seen it sooner, but B, I'm glad that I waited to see it.
Yeah, I think watching it as an adult adds so much. Just learning so much more about the world, so much about what actually goes into a production, and all of that experience I think makes this film more meaningful. And I think Jacob Jeller, great YouTuber by the way, said something similar about thinking of ending things, where the author for the book that movie's based off of said, like, I could not have written this book if I wrote it as a teenager or a young adult. I needed my life experience to really like resonate with the story and what I was going for. And I think it's very similar here. It's the only way you can watch a movie like this. Because I imagine if I watched this as a teenager, I'd be like, well, that didn't make any sense, and that would be that. Like, I wouldn't watch it again. Wouldn't be talking about it, like you said, Daryl.
Oh yeah, man.
There's just a small thing that I was looking at some gifs of Synecdoche to add to the chat for laughs, but in the doctor scenes when he completely mishears the diagnoses or like you should see an ophthalmologist and he's why do I need to see a neurologist? Like just him completely mishearing things is something I also relate to. Just the audio processing sometimes is delayed. It's just like this is just finding humor in that. And just man, I mean the again these scenes connected on a more personal level than I anticipated them to. But
What
It's
a
also a
fucking
very entertaining movie. Like, it's very well paced. It
yeah,
never
like
feels sluggish, except for the end, which is very intentional. I would argue that was
as
very
depressing as the
intentional.
subject matter is, it's honestly very funny at times. Like there's some
Yeah,
fucked up
it's
things that happen
hilarious.
to him,
No,
but
I was going
it's
to
really
say the
funny.
same.
Yeah.
There are moments in this that had me laughing out loud. I mean, the whole segment with the 4-year-old that wrote a novel about
Little Winky.
a skinhead who is a virulent anti-Semite. Like, it's just fucking hilarious, and it sounds like some shit you would hear if you've ever been around, like, upstate New York hipsters. Like, just as kind of a personal aside, I met up with some friends, or friends of friends, in Ohio on the way back from Canada, and these were the most like I mean I'm assuming they're not listening, and I'm not going to name them, but the biggest douchebag hipsters like you've ever met, and they were always like they knew everything that was trendy before it was fucking trendy. It was one of the most miserable experiences I've ever had being stuck in a room with these people. And this sounds like the kind of shit that they would think is fucking awesome. Like just the absurdist, I mean, dialed up to this absurdist, surreal degree, but just like you know someone like this, and it's like it's such an insane parody, but it has this like level of believability. There's
Mhm.
just something to this film that is legitimately fucking hilarious in spite of how tragic it is.
I think there's two scenes that also stick out to me that are equally as funny as they are completely, absolutely devastating. It's when he goes to Berlin to try to meet up with his daughter, and Jennifer Jason Leigh character comes up instead. And he's like accusing her of grooming her, and he's like, she's 4 years old, and then she hits him with the news that she's almost 11 now. Like those like 6 years just completely went under his nose. Um, and then
Well, and it's also a callback to like the 4-year-old who wrote the novel, and it's like this weird, like everything's kind of mixed up and jumbled up, and
true.
there's no sense of time or narrative or space. It's
And then
one sort of ball.
when he finally meets up with his daughter, spoiler alert, she's on like her deathbed, and she's been told this like lie about him and reason that they didn't see each other since he was a child, and like he just tries to buy into the lie for her own sake, but then he gets no forgiveness for it anyway, and it's just like it's such a fucking knife twist, like what the actual fuck, but it's like it's devastating, um, but it's just so
Is it a lie
absurd.
though? There's a lot of like weird perception stuff going on with this movie. Like I don't know. I've heard a lot of different takes as to the actual flow of what's going on, like via the purgatory idea, because there's a lot of insinuations that he's jumped from somewhere and died. But like, I don't know, man. I kind of feel like, to me, what we're seeing is the play, but
Mm,
because the play got so deep into making itself, real life bled into the play. So like, and we're kind of seeing like that chunk, right? Like they even say like the guy's been following him for 20 years, and like 20 years before that was like when like the opening of the movie basically. So like there's something concise, and like if it was, a quote unquote play, wouldn't they have things like these television excerpts to get glimpses into his mental state, and like I don't know, just
I
like
don't know.
the
Um,
theatrics of it all. Like and like if that's happening, then take it that Diane Weist is the one in control of all of this. Then maybe there's like her life bleeding in too, because she actually has a husband named Eric, which is supposedly who's been doing the anal sex. You know what I mean? So there's something like it's like a bleeding intersect of all these stories and lives. Like I can't
yeah.
parse it out per se, but to me, that's how I almost see it. Like this whole thing
And
is the production from
No,
start to
no, and
finish.
that's and that's the thing, and there are details again that that feed into that. Like first time I remember noticing the older man who's like stalking him because he's basically shadowing him on was when he's having sex and he's shadow window. But on rewatch, he was there outside when he was getting his mail in the first scene, and that completely floored
Yeah,
me. Like, holy shit,
yeah.
he was there that whole time. And even like looking, like stalking him during like conversations with the woman that he ends up working with, entirety of the not Claire,
and I
but
will I will say, I mean, I feel like one interpretation of this, and something that I kind of came back to is like I think in a way this play is a sense of comfort because it's like it's something that he can control because he has so little control over these other facets of his life that this play is like the one solace that he has where he can come to and kind of in a weird way like play God. It's like he's creating this I don't know if it's purgatory or afterlife of sorts, where it's like it's not the real world, but he's in control of it, and he's kind of like, and I think at the end of it though, like we can go back and forth on these different interpretations and what I got out of it and what I think of it and what Daryl got out of it and what Devin got out of it. But at some point, I really don't want a definitive answer. I think that Kaufman is right, because I feel like if I knew exactly what his intent was, I feel like I would be cheated out of something. And I feel like this film works because there's so many layers to it, and because it's like looking into this mirror. Like you're seeing that reflection of yourself in this piece of art, and that is fucking genius. Like that takes real talent to accomplish a film like this.
It's definitely a film I see myself coming back to every couple scenes.
Absolutely. No,
Just
absolutely.
and it just having a different context depending on where. Damn. I mean, yeah, we could go on forever about this, but we are getting a little crunched on time. And I know next film be be a fun one to get into. But
So,
I mean,
if
what
there's
is there
if
what is
there's
there
if
more to
anyone has
say?
any
I
other
mean,
final thoughts, like we can share them
well,
now. But
I just wanted to
yeah.
say, like, Devin, we had a film teacher called, Brian Dunphy back at Fanshawe College, and he said something about 2001: A Space Odyssey, where he legitimately thought the film wasn't quite as complex as people were making it out. He didn't mean that as a bad thing. He just meant that it just because of the way it's designed, people kind of overthink things
Yeah.
and kind of see it in a overly complicated way. And I feel like that's the same with Synecdoche. I think it's simply about how your creative work can be affected by an awful disease and traumatic events in your life. I don't think it's more complicated than that, but that's not a discredit to the movie. That's very much a credit to its design and the irony of a director that's obsessed with every single detail, ironically encouraging the audience to also be obsessed with every single
Just the fact that he puts all that work and effort in, but ultimately it creates something that is far greater than the parts. Like you could analyze every single scene and break it down. And like, I said that this could probably amount to a 4-hour cut, but they might have been very economical in how they filmed it, and he made very intentional about making it like to be. There actually may not be that much beyond what we see in the final picture. But it still amounts to something that's greater than we see on. And yeah, I mean, films like this just have it. Fortunately, they office so much all at once, but I think the reputation builds greatly over time. Um, which is why
no,
I'm
and
very comfortable giving this film a 9.6. I might even bump it up to it.
I think I'm going to give this a solid 9 out of 10. But I think within a few years, if I come back and rewatch this and I really look into some of the analysis and the deep dive stuff that is out there about this film and the time since its release, I think this could be a 10 out of 10 film. And I think this could maybe someday be on my top 10 favorite films list of all time. Like, I think this is uh, just a masterpiece in the purest sense of the word. And I'm excited to see where I land on it finally. But yeah, no, I loved it.
Giving this one a 9 out of 10. Basically, my only complaint is that I don't resonate with it as much as some of Kaufman's other works. But I
Call
hate
yourself
this
lucky.
pretentious douche, but he does make some good movies. Bummer.
Yeah.
What do you think,
Yeah.
Daryl?
I mean, this is I gotta agree with you guys. I think I'm leaning more towards a 9.5 just because like yeah, it hit me fucking deep and it didn't like I'm almost more impressed because it didn't like it took like a day of settling and thinking about it for my like and it just kept improving and improving and improving and like yeah, man. I don't know. There's something about this movie. It's like the fucking like a movie adaptation of the final song from Dewey Cox. Like it's everything It's like the only other thing that I could see being called Everything Everywhere All at Once. Like there's so much,
Yes.
it's so dense, and it tries to encapsulate that every single person is their own fucking main character, and like what else can a movie about everything be? So yeah, at that point and executing that, like he did it on as his first debut as a director. Like, yeah, it's a 9.5. I gotta.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
just a quick note. Incredibly well directed too. Incredible visual effects, great makeup, loads of great cinematography. Just wanted to say it. Shout out real quick.
But yeah,
$20 million. It looks better than some $300 million movies today.
Jesus,
I think
that's
Charlie was
insane.
super smart
I
about,
know.
you know, writing films first, just really getting, you know, his ideas onto paper and working with other directors, learning from them, um, in order to make this debut as incredible as meditated. A project like this before
Yeah.
taking on the mantle himself to direct it, actually like knocks it out of the park. Um,
Yeah. Like,
I don't know how well his other films held up since then. I did remember seeing Anomalies, enjoyed it. But I don't think he's quite.
Anomalisa is one of those that I've meant to watch for a long time. My girlfriend is actually a huge Dan Harmon fan, and I know Dan Harmon had some role in Anomalisa. I don't know exactly what his involvement was, but we've both been talking Anomalisa for different reasons.
Fair enough.
But yeah,
Your mic's getting a little distorted there. Just careful how you're wrestling it. Um,
Speaking
yes.
of distortion,
Oh boy.
oh boy. Daryl, did you want to take on this one?
Fuck, man. Okay, yeah, you know what? Sure. Here's
Good.
the thing.
good start.
Here is the thing. Ari Aster, I think he's one of those love him or hate him kind of directors. And in the vein of Kaufman, we're talking about another movie that is so heavily detail oriented that it actually does benefit from a rewatch. I can say this because I'm one of the very foolish people that saw this movie twice in theaters. That was 6 hours of my life, folks. 6 hours. I could have been at work. Regardless, I think there's something really special when talking about Beau. I think it is a mental odyssey, in a much different vein than Synecdoche. I think that there's something really palpable with the world being created and like the ground up approach. I really do appreciate that from this film. And yeah, basically Beau is what is he, like 40 or 50-year-old uh single dude living in an apartment building, and life just it's kind of like a spiral of just things go worse and worse and worse and worse, and then worse and then worse and worse, and then there's a play, and then it goes worse and worse and worse, and one of the greatest mother-son interactions in all of cinema happens.
Wow.
So, you know what I'm saying? That is, in a nutshell, Beau is Afraid.
It's a
Yeah,
Jewish
what
Lord of
did
the
you guys think?
Rings. It's like
Yes, I love that description of it. A Jewish Lord of the Rings.
Even though it
it's
makes no
It
sense.
makes
it's
no sense. It's just because
which
it's 3 hours long.
and I think he throws those descriptions out there as a sort of way of derailment because people keep asking him for answers, and he's, you know, trying to be Charlie Kaufman, saying I shouldn't even be talking about this for another 10 years or so. Um, which I do kind of agree with to an extent. I do want to leave information on the audience side. So I was there on your second watch, Daryl, and I remember
It was
before
incredible.
just before the title opened, you just had this deep like inhale and exhale, and I didn't know what I was in for yet. Um, fuck. Um,
It was a
that's
great watch to be seated beside you for your first time seeing that movie, because your reactions were almost as good as the movie itself.
oh man.
Oh
Just
man.
constant, like, what? What the
Y-
fuck? Oh
Yeah.
my god, what?
Some of the reveals,
Damn.
man. Oh, it was so good. I wish I could have done the same for Steve. It would have been a much different thing. He probably would have taken a
Oh.
couple swings at me over the 3 hours, but
Would
you know.
have choked you,
Just
Homer
a
Simpson
little whip
style.
crack for every time he pulls out his phone.
Yeah,
Why you
no.
little?
Um,
Yeah, that's
No,
man,
I did
Thank you, of
not
course.
pull out my phone the entire time. I want to say that.
Uh,
I gave this
Thank
film.
you, Steven.
we'll take
No,
your
no,
word
no,
for it.
no. I'm not. I know Devin's getting the whole like, oh, you did the bare minimum. No. I want to throw this out there. I gave this film full benefit of the doubt.
Good. Good.
So.
So this film hit me like a truck, needless to say. I got sufficiently high when watching it. I don't know if that was the best choice.
Yeah, sorry.
You enabled my worst habits. But man, this is like type of film that I had been subconsciously trying to make in a sense. Like I've been trying to this like super subjective, paranoid type of film that really explores the inner psyche of a character, seeing it unravel. It's very Kafkaesque. That's the term I was trying to say earlier. But it was just so surreal, and I was kind of pissed that Ari Aster made it first. But like a film that kind of explores the psyche of a character to the degree, in this artfully uh, magnitude. So I'm pissed that he made it first, but it's also kind of gratifying. I'm There's definitely things about it that I would have like done differently for my own kind of tastes, but I still fully appreciate it for what it is. And I went back and watched it a second time, and I think I was almost emotionally numb to it a little bit on the second watch, but still kind of hold it in the same regard that I did when I first watched it. It I didn't have a I was almost compelled to silence for a little while afterwards. Like I had some thoughts to say, but I'm like I really have to for a while before I speak on it. Um, Steven, what did you think?
Hold on. It feels like I'm having some technical issues.
It
Is that better? Can you guys
Yeah.
hear me?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, we're good now. We're
you
good.
sound better.
Sorry. What did I think of it? Wow, I absolutely hated this movie. I
Wow,
thought it was
I'm shocked and
absolutely
appalled.
terrible. No,
Steven, I can't believe I'm saying this. I think I'm kind of with you. I don't know if I
Woo!
hate it as much as
Here-
you do. That being said, I probably share a lot of the same thoughts, so go on.
Wow.
here's my thing.
I'm
right?
ready for it. I am ready for it. Let's hear it.
No, here's the thing. I'm gonna be as honest, as painfully honest as I possibly can. My I'm just reacting to the fucking gifs in chat. Here's the problem, right? I went into this with as open mind as I possibly could, with as open of a mind. My issues with Hereditary, we talked about those on the podcast. I think it's a film that is kind of a horror movie for people who are embarrassed to admit they like horror movies. I feel like I've seen this film a million times before, and there's so much about Hereditary that is just like it's one of those films that like so much has to go exactly to the way that it is written. There's no room for like one single like so much of it is just like fucking what is the word I'm looking for? It's like this fucking Jenga tower, and the more that you think about it and the more that you start to kind of poke at it, the less and less it makes sense. And that was my interpretation of Hereditary. Gorgeously shot, very well acted by some of the actors. But overall, it's a strong debut that has a lot of issues that was held up to this regard of like the best horror movie since The Exorcist, which already just like that sentence alone turned me off of the film. I had issues with it. I was anxious to give him another chance. Midsommar, I still have not seen all the way through. I gave it a very fair chance. I need to go back and revisit it. I'll admit that. I wasn't crazy about what I saw, and in reading what I missed out on, it doesn't sound like something I would enjoy. I went into this with an open mind because the thing is, with Hereditary and Midsommar, there is this element of like this guy who doesn't really want to admit that he likes horror movies, that wants to think he's like cooler or better than old school horror movies. drawing from the same well as like an Eli Roth or a fucking Quentin Tarantino, but is somehow like ashamed of it and is not wearing his influences on his sleeves, but instead wants to like hide behind this like hipster douchebag kind of like I'm better than that. There's
Okay.
like this inherent dishonesty to what he's doing. And
I
the
would
reason that hold on.
go on.
The reason that I was excited about Beau is Afraid is because it didn't seem like it was something different. It wasn't, oh, he watched Rosemary's Baby or, you know, the fucking Wicker Man and he's going to do his version of that that's like cool for theater kids. Like Beau is Afraid was marketed as this wholly original thing. And I went into it with this open mind because, well, maybe if he gets out of what he's been doing, maybe there's that potential for growth. I don't see a potential for growth. I think this is a step backwards. Not
Yeah, I
only
agree.
do I dislike this film, I resent that this film is made. I
Wow.
resent that it was ever made because no, here's the thing. There are filmmakers like fucking like Charlie Kaufman, like Park Chan Wook, like fucking S. Craig Zahler, filmmakers that we have talked about on this podcast before that have lamented how hard it is to get a fucking movie made. Francis Ford Coppola, who made three of the greatest films of all time, at least three of the greatest American films of all time: The Godfather Part 2, fucking Apocalypse Now. They are so ingrained into the cultural zeitgeist and the fucking lexicon of cinema. He's having to put his own money up, front his own money to get this fucking passion project made, Megalopolis or whatever the fuck it is. Like the fact that we have that going on, but this garbage is given a blank check. This is by far one of the most insulting wastes of times that I have ever had the displeasure of sitting through for this podcast. I mean, I fucking hated this movie.
I love how much this has rustled your jimmies. It's very entertaining for
No,
me.
no, and that's
Yeah, it's
fair. And that's
hilarious.
fair. This is
Like I couldn't disagree with you more, but I also respect the opinion. This is fun. This is good
This
entertainment.
is good stuff.
But no,
Yeah,
Can
good
I
entertainment.
open up with
I
my view? Sorry.
go ahead. Go ahead. Why not?
Well,
no,
the
because I
thing
have
is,
more, but
yeah,
go ahead, Ian, please.
I'm sure you have
sorry.
more, Steven. Hold up.
So my thing was, I had my wisdom tooth removed not too long ago, and I originally wanted to see Beau's Afraid in IMAX, but my teeth were in so much pain that just going to the theater wasn't going to happen, just in case something went wrong and I had to fix something. And so I watched it at home, through totally legal means. I totally didn't pirate it, and I thought it was a miserable, repetitive experience with incredible technical aspects and a script that should have been bulldozed over by a more talented writer. But I wanted to give it a second chance because it's like maybe that's just a wisdom teeth talking. Maybe I'm just in pain and I wasn't in the mood for a depressing, miserable, long movie. Like maybe that was the case. So Daryl, I can't remember if you invited me out, Daryl, or if I just asked to tag along. But I tagged along with you and Devin. We got to the end of the movie. I just turned to Daryl and I said, "Daryl, yeah, I still don't like this movie." I gave this a second chance. I paid way more attention to it the second time around. And in terms of technical stuff, I think it's near perfect. I think you have to give it that at least, Steven, is that on a technical level, it's great. Like it's the cinematography is beautiful, the lighting is great, the
I have
editing is
never had a problem with Ari Aster as a cinematographer or as someone who does production design. In
yeah.
fact, if I had to pick one thing to say about his films that are consistent that I can't complain about, that would be it. He is a master at shooting a film. Writing a film, directing actors, I don't know, but setting a stage and making a shot, absolutely. No, he's brilliant.
He'd be an amazing cinematographer, and the whole time I was just like, man, like if this guy like shot, say, like a Kevin, well, I don't know, I'm trying to think of like an infamously low budget director or a low budget movie, like great writing, and imagine if he shot like an early Tarantino movie or like a low budget horror movie, something more visually interesting that's already well written. Like the whole time I was just thinking that could have been something magical, but I think the issue really just comes down to the screenplay and there's a lot of he tries to tackle so many different themes and ideas at once. Like, yeah, there's the themes of anxiety, which we'll get into, but it's also an anti-war movie. It's also an anti-cancel culture movie. It's also an anti uh male movie. It's anti everything movie. Like it tackles all of these ideas at once, and it doesn't devote enough time to any of them. That the film just feels like a discombobulated mess of
And
undercooked ideas.
I will say this. There is a moment in this film because I think the first act of this film is terrible. I didn't know what the fuck was going on. And not in a way, and I know that's like a cheap criticism because people are, oh, whatever. But there's this weird like disconnect between what's happening on screen. Like there's this bizarre confusion that is not David Lynch confusion, but like just shit is happening on screen without much rhyme or reason.
Well,
There's
it's
a
meant to
moment in the
reflect
second act.
anxiety, I think.
Yeah,
But
welcome to
I mean,
mental
I
health.
get
Okay.
no. There's a moment in the second act when they get to the play, and kind of like what you're talking about, Ian. It's like all of the anxiety and the fucking Freudian commentary and the commentary about this and war and all of these different things takes a backseat, and the film becomes this other thing about like an allegory for the Jewish people. I think is kind of what he's going for.
Okay,
And
I
it's
gotta
this
stop you guys there. This is getting you guys are getting way. This is not. No,
Okay.
that is not it. I would go to argue that this. I totally see where you guys are coming from, but I did not see this as anti-war. I saw this as a movie that used a character who had been through war, and a movie about PTSD, which is another mental health thing. Like again,
Yes.
I see this as a mental odyssey, but the person who we're following has severe mental health issues, and thus it is represented that way. We are with him in his fucking shoes, and it does not make for a comfortable introduction. But it's odd that you say that, Steve, because I hear a lot of people say, like, that didn't like it, say, well, I really like the first act. If he just kept with the first act and did that, I'd be
well,
fine. But he
no,
has to go off
here's
and make 5 different segments. But that's what an odyssey is, you know what I mean? That's why it's 3
no,
hours,
and
because
this
you need
is what
5
I'm.
segments. But go
does
ahead.
it though?
Yeah,
Hold
yeah,
on,
yeah.
because I do have a thought here. Let me get to it. Because the thing where he gets to the second act, and there's the whole thing with the people in the woods, and there's this play. That to me is where the film almost touches on great. That to me is where there's this whole segment where it's like there's this weird kind of like spiritual allegory of like the Jewish people, and it's shot in such a way that is kind of sort of reminiscent of like this stop motion animated thing that's we kind of saw in Barbie earlier this year. We kind of
Looks
saw it
beautiful.
in
Yeah.
Into the Spider-Verse. We saw it in Everything Everywhere All at Once. That is where this film really touches upon something great. And I honestly, when I came on to like when I was preparing for this episode tonight, I was almost willing to give this film some leeway or some slack because of how much I liked that segment.
What happened?
Oh,
What
then I
happened
went off
was
about Brown Bunny and he got all sour, so
no,
he had
no,
to
no, no,
go
no,
off on
no,
me.
no.
Yeah,
What
no salty.
happened was I realized that it actually made this film that much worse because I had such high hopes, because they were slashed yet again, that I was so invested in this film and made the mistake of being like, oh shit, there's actually something here. And for me to have finally built up this confidence and to have that dashed with what is maybe one of the most laughable, just insanely idiotic endings I've seen in recent memory, it made whatever goodwill that I had towards that second act moment that much worse, because it's like, well, fuck, what was the, like, I'm honestly at a loss for words with this fucking movie, and I am struggling to think of a single good thing to say. I mean,
Well,
like,
besides the
Cool.
technical
So
aspects, yeah,
let us
the
take over
technical
then
stuff.
and get our side out, and you can gather. So that works. Yeah, man. Like to me, like I was just kind of saying, it's a lot more simple to me than I think a lot of the widespreading things you guys are talking about. I see those more as just elements amongst this single, like this more focused kind of journey, wherein like there's tons of foreshadowing, there's tons of amazing details, like you said. Production design is fucking on point for this movie. They went so much harder than they actually needed to. And that's the kind of thing that makes a story about a Jewish guy with mom issues and a pure fear of ejaculating. Like it makes it work. You know what I mean? Like if you were to describe this movie for me, I probably wouldn't be sold on it. But the execution, and especially like you were saying before, the technical elements, man. Like you can say, like the part of the reason I was so hard on Brown Bunny is because there is nothing to bring it back. To say that this is all
Exactly.
completely wasted and everything else, man, you probably took in like 7, 8, probably 10 shots that influenced you on a level you don't even realize, because this movie goes there and does it. And like you said, plays with that second act, literally plays. Oh my god, that I wasn't intending that. But yeah, fucking it really goes there. So even if you have been left with the most sour taste in your mouth, there's still something to glean. And I think that's the difference between why I was just going so hard on a product where I couldn't find anything like, at the very least, the technical elements of this are just ooh,
but
I
bang.
agree with that.
but
I
here's
agree with
the
that.
thing. I mean, going back to what Ian was talking about with like a 1990s Kevin Smith project or a fucking Quentin Tarantino project or
Or
one of
just
those
like a low budget movie with
low
a great
budget
script.
horror movies. Those movies have great fucking scripts, and they have great fucking characters, and they have dialogue
I'd
and
agree. Yeah.
ideas, and they are able to convey those ideas and characters and dialogue in a way that is interesting and original, and it's done in such a way that you could shoot it on a fucking potato and it would still find an audience.
You keep throwing original around like this movie isn't one of like the most original, like there's structurally original,
I honestly
conceptually
think it's
original, like
pretty cliche. Like I feel like the trope of a character
I
dealing
couldn't
with
disagree
mental
with you more.
issues from a parental figure is
The
so played
the
out.
execution is
that's
anything
what I'm
but,
talking
though.
about.
The
Yeah,
execution
the
is what
execution.
The
really brings it
technical
forward.
execution, sure.
No, but
No,
structural too. Like
the
it's about the
structural,
script.
absolutely. So much of this film made sense when you realize the baby was dropped on his head in the first shot, which is something I didn't pick up on until the second viewing. It made so much more sense, but it is a purely subjective kind of journey that we take on in Beau. And if you felt frustrated and disappointed by the end, congratulations, you know how Beau feels.
Bingo.
This is how empathy
No,
works.
I
Um,
think you're giving this film entirely too
Hey,
much
we let you
credit.
man, let
How
us
I
go.
feel.
Okay, like
all
we
right.
No,
So
come on.
cook, Devin, cook.
I want to reel this back. So boasting up other filmmakers that we like who uh, Martin Scorsese has a lot of positive things to say about this film. He kind of co-hosted a Q&A with the director after the screening of it. So there's that. Not that that really amounts to anything. Just saying that, oh, a director you happen to like happens to like this film, whatever. Um, but I think that this film is incredibly, personal, and it follows, like, again, the journey of this person, really detrimental mental health, and all these anxieties and fears are things that I think people every day kind of have without realizing. I know people who have had this much of detrimental mental health, and to see this kind of portrayed on screen, I think ultimately is a good thing for being able to empathize with people who have these kind of really fucked up perceptions of reality and who have had like the worst things of life kind of them. I do think that cinema is an engine for empathy, and these types of stories should be portrayed in a way kind of put themselves in other people's shoes, because you don't know what people have been through, right, or what they
Yeah.
haven't been, the type of hells that they build around themselves, intentionally or not, to cope. And I think this film is a powerful at portraying a sliver of that. You
And,
know,
and that's not cinematically comforting either, right? I think
it's
that's
not
part of what
comforting.
we're seeing is
It's
like,
not meant to be an entertaining, enjoyable experience.
it-
But I do think actually this film is incredibly funny for all that happens
yeah,
in it. Like I've had some of the hardiest, most uncomfortable laughs in a theater watching this film. It's like I'm laughing one second, then I'm cringing internally the next
I
because of
yeah.
never laughed so
I
hard.
got the
how it
laughs
hit me.
going through in the theater a couple
Yeah,
It was
times.
I
like
had a few
Yeah.
chuckles. There were a few chuckles.
the involuntary like noises that people make, especially in the sex scene, was it's something I'm never gonna forget.
Oh my god, the reaction to her being rigor mortis was so good in the theater.
Oh,
Oh,
that
dude.
fucking that hit me so hard. Like goddamn, like
Yeah, man.
Yeah,
it's one of those films that I think you either get it at your core or you don't. And I hate to put it in that kind of black and white dichotomy, but if you didn't feel personally affected by it and to some degree, it just isn't going to resonate with you. And I think that might be part of what ultimately like you can appreciate it for the technical elements, you can appreciate it for that, but if it didn't hit you at your core, then it just may not land with you.
Yeah.
And so,
And he never holds your hand to get you there, right? Like you as the viewer have to do the
yeah.
legwork. And I
yeah,
know
and
that's not what
I've
a
had
lot of people
paranoid
want.
episodes like this for one reason or another in my life, not to this degree. I hope I don't ever get this far gone. Um, but just the sense that everyone's against you, even his therapist betrays him at one point, like that's a terrifying thought. And I feel like
Oh,
there's a really good indicator of reality shifting when he's in that therapy session. It's like he's trying to be open and honest. There's a very clear switch in the reality when, well, there's a 180-degree rule break, but then the background sound changes as well, and it's just a hard cut. And I think the rest of the film just sort of takes on this, paranoid odyssey from there.
yeah.
And
And not to get too meta, but like in what you're talking about, we got to remember that he changed his production logo to be the Mona Company. So that actually plays at the beginning of the film. So you could even interpret it as being further skewed through the lens of this company trying to make their son, like this character, look as bad as possible, right? Like
oh yeah,
there's it can go so deep in that regard. And again, if you don't buy into it and you don't enjoy it, that's completely fine and understandable because of the kind of movie this is and how it won't help you or guide you ever or give you likable or give you like the humor you have to find. And I think we just found that out, like the fact that you didn't chuckle once. Like dude, there was I think everybody in the theater had at least one or two moments where something
yeah.
so random or
In
wild got them.
fairness, the Highland cinema is very much the kind of environment that would
Yeah,
love Ari Aster's movies, though,
yeah,
and like
oh yeah.
resonate with his films, like his artistic kind of.
There was a handful of
Yeah,
people, but they were all in it. Yeah, they were all into it. I mean,
that's
yeah.
true.
but I mean that
And
said,
I
even
will
outside of the
say
theater environment, I do think it does connect.
I
And
will say
there's
I
one
don't.
theory I want to get into later about the mother and the company that she runs and all the drug ads he happens to be in.
Yeah.
Maybe, just this chemical soup of
Well,
that
really
mistreatment.
quickly, I do want to say I don't know exactly how fair it is to say that this film doesn't hold your hand. I mean, there are a multitude of films that I'm a fan of that are incredibly challenging. I mean, we talked about Synecdoche, New York. I think that's an incredibly challenging film. I think David Lynch, I'm a massive fan of his work. And we can go on with that. I think it's not so much that this film is, not holding your hand or that it's not, it's too challenging. I think it's just a film that confuses just sort of random bursts of throwing shit at the wall as narrative depth. I
Okay,
think
well, what's
Is it
happening right
that the
now is
film
no,
is
no.
confused or
This
that
is
you were
just
confused watching
yeah.
it?
This is just Jackson
I
Pollock
don't.
syndrome. You're just
Yeah.
saying that like people are throwing paint against a wall and there's no art, and other people are saying, "Well, I clearly see the art and the thing they're going for," and you're saying, "Well,
Man's
no,
trash
because
is no
I could
man's
throw
treasure.
paint against a wall and do the same." Like it's you can't just say that from your perspective. It's not worth
Yeah,
any.
there's more
I
effort put into it than that. Like,
And it's not black and white either. It's not saying because you've watched things that are challenging, you don't like this. What I'm saying is you aren't getting to the finish line in terms of like mentally on board with this movie. You're not
I-
getting on the train because no conductor is like helping
It's
you
just
get there.
that, you know,
It aids you.
you're just on a
I
different frequency of the film, and I'm not saying it's higher or lower. It's just like
No, I'm just saying.
it's
Yeah, exactly.
it'll
that
either
the
resonate
way
with you
that
or it
this
doesn't.
film has a frequency is to give it entirely too much credit.
No,
That
but
is
you're
what
just saying it's not randomness though. You can't say that inherently something is just fucking random and meaningless when we're like, hey, here's the meaning. Like that's why Devin's saying like it's either you're on board and are for this idea or you're not. It's not that you can make a $20 million film and be on set like, well, I don't know. I'm just doing it for no reason. Like, no, man, you're directing the actors.
he
Like
brought on board
the
so many
giant.
famous
You
actors.
think
Like
you're gonna have a
obviously they
20-foot
saw
tall
something
penis
in the movie.
monster and not have a reason? Like he knows what it means. It's up to us to interpret.
Yeah,
If you
but
want to
the
call that
problem.
random, then you're maybe not digging deep enough. It's
Well,
that's all I'm
I
saying.
don't think it's random. I just think it's misguided. I just don't think it's in the right place.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. I'm specifically just taking arms with you. Can't just call any film just throwing random shit at the wall because
Yeah.
that's not
Especially
how
a film
films
of this much.
A
Yeah,
film,
especially
a
with
film with
this
this
much
much
money
buzz
behind
that
it.
doesn't have incidental choices. I mean, there was a fun tidbit about how Ari Aster really put the art deck to work as he kept coming up with ideas for the graffiti in the background, and I really found that amusing, like all the graffiti that's
He
in the back.
painted all that
Yeah,
himself.
I was gonna say he did a
apparently.
chunk of it himself too. Yeah, like
yeah.
all the caricatures, like that's very specifically his
Oh yeah.
style.
Yeah, yeah, he has a lot of attention to detail, but I think my biggest problem centers back to the Brown Bunny, where like I just don't care. I don't care about anything that's happening. I don't care about any of the characters because they have no depth beyond what Ari Aster is hammering home over and over and over again. That's not depth. That's just insistence. It's insistence of depth, and I didn't feel anything for the characters. And I'm gonna say it. Joaquin Phoenix sucked in this movie. I'm sorry. I love Joaquin
I
Phoenix. He's
disagree.
a great actor. I think he sucked. I don't blame him for sucking. I blame the direction for him sucking, which is weird because I thought the supporting cast was pretty great. Like especially both actresses that played the mother. Like they stole the show big time in this movie for me. Like every scene they were
I
in.
also
Oh my
agree.
God,
I
But
thought
that
that
is
Joaquin
a
was
bone,
Phoenix
man.
kind
the
of
worst that I've
blows,
seen
man.
Joaquin Phoenix.
Yeah,
And
don't
I
like
even made the comment that I was honestly impressed that you managed to get a bad performance out of one of the best working actors today. Like,
especially when the
I
rest of the cast is
I
so
have
good.
no
Yeah,
idea
but
what
the dude
direction was
commits.
here,
Look
but
at what the
Joaquin
character is.
Phoenix
Yeah.
He commits to.
terrible.
I think this is a better performance
He
than Joker.
commits to her. Oh.
I would take the Oscar away from Joker and give it to Beau.
You're just
personally.
saying that to make me
No,
angry.
I would
You're
too.
just saying that to make me mad.
Joker's a lot more surface level than what's going on with this film.
There's no, this is all surface level. I
No.
don't agree.
It's a movie about mental depth. How
That's
could it
all
be
it's
surface
about. There's no depth to the mental depth. It's my problem.
No,
I actually
Ian,
really
you're
like
right.
that
I
argument.
can't believe I'm saying this. You are absolutely right. This is a movie that is saying and insisting that it is deep and is not deep. Like
I
that's
kind of agree. I hate to say it, but I'm 100% with you on that. I don't know if I hate it as much as you do, but
what am I supposed
Man.
to get out of this fucking? I mean, spoiler. Like, there's a fucking penis monster in this movie. How am I supposed to take this even within like? This fucking movie is
That's
like
your dad. He's a big dick.
yeah, there's no subtlety. It's just like,
There's
oh
no-
wow,
I
his
mean-
dad was just a big, like that's so boring. Like all of this build up to the
No,
reveal that oh your dad was kind of an
It
asshole.
is-
It's like wow,
I mean,
gee, great.
no,
I'm glad I
it's
sat for
honestly
2.5 hours to get
laughable.
to
I
that.
mean, at a certain point, it is.
It's
laughable that
supposed
this
to be
film-
funny.
Okay,
Like, there's
guys.
like, oh, his dad's a giant fucking penis, and here comes the fucking, mentally handicapped,
Where
PTSD
is-
ridden
if that isn't the
soldier.
Where
funniest
is
shit
the
ever, get the
penis?
fuck out.
Where
No,
is
it's
the penis?
not. It thinks that it is so clever and so funny, and
It's
it's
in
not.
the attic.
Where? Oh yeah, and in the attic. What might that maybe be referring to? You know what I mean? Like,
Oh,
come
yeah.
on, take a stab. Like, I feel what you're saying, Steve,
Take
but
a
like,
stab, really? Come on.
there you go. Even better. I don't intend for it, and that makes it better. No, like legitimately, like if you just put a little bit of thought, you can kind of get the allegory he's going for.
Well,
Like,
yeah,
he's been
but
afraid
what's
to
the
come.
point? Why should I care? Like, that's
because it's the journey. Like the journey has
but
led to that point. That's his mental
gotta
issues are
look
brought on by
beyond.
this
But
ability to never come. If you
there's
had
no.
never come, what kind of mental disorders would you have? You know what I'm saying?
I was
also
thinking
wanna-
about why Synecdoche is the film that resonated with me the most of all three films we talked about. I think a big reason is because the main character has a fucking character arc. The other two characters, the other two movies have no arcs. They just repeat the same steps over and over again. They just don't have enough depth for intrigue to make that bearable. Like, say, Daniel Plainview or Patrick Bateman. Like, there's no depth to the characters to make the lack of an arc acceptable by any means.
I also want to bring this up. This movie is over 20 minutes longer than Dragged Across Concrete, which we talked about on the podcast.
I
You
still
guys
think that
all-
film
You're-
feels longer.
You guys all
I
said
still
it's so
think
self-indulgent
I
and
still
too
think that film
overlong.
feels longer.
Yeah,
I
you
think
had
it
to
feels-
bring that
Fine,
up.
But I felt every minute of this.
I felt every minute of that more though.
I
No,
felt
come
I
on.
felt every minute of it and loved it.
Well,
This is this film is a complete Rorschach test, and this is what I liked about it: is that people are going to get completely different things out of it, depending on who they are as a person. And and not to single anybody out, but I feel like that is the effect of films like this: that there's just so much that's thrown up there, and it really comes down to the audience.
But is it maybe just inherently lazy
No.
to say that no, just to say that this is I'm you figure out the whole thing, right? Like you know what I'm saying? Like I mean,
We
this
literally
is the
just went
same-
over why
They-
that's a
they
good
did
thing
just
about
go
No, but
over it.
this is the same debate that we had with that I saw with like fucking Skinamarink earlier this year. Like I don't know if you guys saw that movie, but
I
that
did.
was another. I thought it was terrible, right? I thought it was awful because it's like there's not a movie there. There's this fucking fill in the blank fucking Mad Libs of like I don't know, maybe I don't know.
Bro, this is 5 movies. What is the comparison here? Like, this is an overly dense
Yeah, I think there
And
was
maybe
something there. It's just
biting
buried
off
under
more than
50.
it can chew. I mean,
Agreed.
maybe it.
I think
Maybe,
this would be a boring movie and not really make the point if it was an hour and a half and not as
I
Odyssey-like.
disagree.
It would-
I think there's a great short movie in this 3-hour movie, and there's a great
there
short
is
movie
a short
in
film
Skinamarink.
that this was based on. This was actually supposed to be Ari Aster's debut, but he held off on it to make Hereditary and Midsummer. But
Yeah,
he made a
rightfully
short
so.
film called Beau, and that's what this is based on.
And
But
that
then
has since been scrubbed from the internet. You
No, it's
cannot find that short
What are you
film.
talking about? I can send you the link to it.
Are you
It's really
serious?
easy.
No,
Yeah,
I'd love to see
and
it.
it's not
I'd
it's
love-
not even that different. Like it's literally like the actor is the main guy from the Strange Things About the Johnsons, like the dad from that. And it's basically just that beginning where like he wakes up, he hears noise banging, and it's like it's the most like white wall fucking student film looking thing. But yeah, it's
I
fine.
would like to see it. Actually, have you guys seen Stranger Things About the Johnsons?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
Not
have.
yet.
I've seen
Not yet.
almost all of his shorts. so- yeah.
Steven, I think you'll enjoy that one. I'm not gonna say.
No, I
anything.
have.
Steve would
seen
love
No,
it.
and
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think that's probably the best thing he's made.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. At least we can agree
Ratings.
that Stranger Things About the Johnsons is great.
Ratings. I hope he doesn't make anything else. This was a colossal waste of time.
I hope he
I
shoots
feel-
something else.
I feel dumber for having watched this. I am
I
giving this
feel
a
you're dumber for it, too.
1.5 out of 10, and I feel incredibly generous.
Wow.
Yeah, I give it a 5 out of 10 just for the technical aspects unlock the performances. Like
That to me
it's-
is counting the technical aspects.
That's fair.
I'm gonna
I
give
think
it a
I'm
s-
100% with you,
I'm gonna give it a solid 8.
girl.
Yeah, I mean, Beau's probably like a fucking 8.5 for me.
Nice.
Like it's pretty high up there. Again, I really dug what he was going for, and I've never seen I do not get what you were saying about the originality. I've never seen a fucking movie like this. It's never in my life.
And with
Yeah.
any luck, I won't see one again. Oh, ho, ho. No, I'm kidding.
Steven, your opinion is the status quo in terms of the film. So congratulations.
Yeah.
I feel slightly vindicated that I've been saying these things about him for a long time, and now finally there's like this consensus that this
It's
is a
like
terrible film.
confirmation bias. Anyway,
No,
I wouldn't
it-
say consensus. I'd say slight majority, but yeah.
Well, at any rate, this has been a fun episode. I think we all got a little self-indulgent, and
a little salty, but no, it's all part of the fun. Honestly, I feel pretty good. Even though we sometimes land on disagreements, I still had fun with this episode. At least we can all agree that Charlie Kaufman is based.
Should we do a
Absolutely.
part
Bingo.
2 of this episode just for a discussion solely based around Synecdoche? I can maybe get my friend Adam on board, who kept recommending I'm Thinking of Ending things on this channel, perhaps.
Possibly, I
Oh,
think I
maybe
think
do like
there's so many films
I'm.
with surrealist
Enjoy.
self-indulgence that we can get into.
I mean, I would argue Mr. Nobody is a phenomenal film that would have fit in this trilogy had we not already discussed it
Oh
earlier.
yeah, that was a great one.
It was fun.
No, great film. Well, at any rate, tune in next month when we talk about some spooky movies. It's Halloween from a Hat. So get those horror, scary movies in my DMs. If you're a member of the Discord, send them over. Send me 3 movies, and we're going to randomly pick 3 of them from all of you guys 3. And we're going to make a whole spooky trilogy out of it. Lots of fun to be had. Thank you for tuning in. Happy birthday, Devin. You guys are fucking awesome. I love you.
Thank you.
Painkiller.
Great night, everybody.
Everyone spam the hat with Midsummer and Hereditary.
Oh yeah, Midsummer. Everybody just puts in Midsummer.
Just out of spite. Nah.
We watched Midsummer 3 times. That's the, the trilogy. Okay.
All right.
Good night, everybody.
Take it easy,
Stay
folks.
tuned. Conan O'Brien.